name's Emma. I'm training to be a medical herbalist, and I also work with other therapies, and I'm going to harvest some nettles to make some soup. Nettles are really amazing wild food, full of vitamins and minerals. Some studies have even shown that they have quite a lot more in them than lots of cultivated vegetables. And yeah, they're free and they're everywhere, and really, really great spring tonic for people to make use of, really safe. So at this time of year, when the nettles are first sprouting, they've got the most amount of all the really good stuff in them, and we just want the tips really, about that much, which is then great because you leave your nettles to come again, and means you can get a second harvest from them, and also leave them then for later in the year for all the bugs that like them. And ladybirds really like to lay their eggs on nettles, and some kinds of moths as well. And then they can also be used medicinally for diuretic, for kidney tonic. And then later in the year, when the minerals all start going back into the roots, you can dig the roots and prepare them. And they've been found to be quite effective in some prostate conditions. And then the seeds can also be harvested and used for stress, adrenal stress. Also the aphids really like them. So sometimes have to be a bit careful that the ants don't come and bite you, because they harvest the aphids' poo, which is sweet. And so yeah, try and find ones without aphids on. Otherwise you end up with a bit of extra protein in your soup, and you might get bitten by the ants because they can be quite defensive. I don't mind getting stung, but if you are going to harvest nettles and you want to protect your hands, probably a good idea to wear gloves. There's an old expression, grasping the nettle, and it's quite true that actually if you touch them gently, then you're more likely to get stung than if you grip them firmly and confidently, but I wouldn't guarantee it. Really important when you're wild harvesting to make sure that there's a good population. With plants like nettles, that's not really a problem, but for other species they might be a lot more in trouble now and have less space in the wild. But also to make sure that you're harvesting from somewhere that's not been polluted, so not by a roadside, and not in any fields that might have been sprayed. So if you don't have access to an open area, then it can be really good to leave a patch in your garden to let the nettles grow, or any other things that we consider as weeds because of their wildlife value, as well as that so many of them can be eaten and be good, nutritious, free food. This is wild garlic, or ransoms, which I also like to put in my spring soups. I try and just pick a few leaves from each bunch. You can eat the flowers and also the bulbs as well, but I like to leave the flowers for the pollinators and to make sure that the seeds can be produced. And I never dig the bulbs because that can then deplete the population. Wild garlic is one of the herbs that's become really, really popular on foraging sites, and unfortunately some people are just going out and digging up the bulbs and really depleting the populations of these wild herbs. We're lucky that we have some in our garden. But again, if you wanted to give yourself a good source of them, then to go and gather them at seed time, gather some seeds and put them somewhere in your garden that you can leave to go wild, means that you'll always have some and you're not depleting wild populations. This is cleavers or sticky weed, which is nearly always found growing around the nettles and the wild garlic and everywhere, really. And most people know it as the herb that you can stick to the clothes. It's a really, really amazing lymphatic herb. You can use it as a tea as well, and I quite often will just pick some and put it in a glass of water, bruise it a bit, and then stand it in a glass of water overnight, and then in the morning, first thing in the morning, I drink the water, and it tastes quite strongly of the cleavers. I like to put some in my spring soups. It's a good time of the year after we've been eating all winter and maybe eaten a bit too much chocolate over Christmas to start doing a spring clean and getting your body ready for the summer. Been some really interesting research done by the National Botanic Gardens of Wales recently about the importance of the wild plants for pollinators, and I think what they've actually found is that even when there's an abundance of cultivated species in a garden, it's the hedgerows and the wild plants that the pollinators go to most for their food source. So it's really important, I think, to leave wild areas in our gardens and to try where we can to protect and to replant the hedgerows, which have sadly been disappearing across the country of late. And it's very easy when you're in a setting like this to sort of think nature's thriving, because it really feels like it here, but these spaces are getting smaller and smaller, and that's making more and more wild populations struggle, which is really important for the pollinators and also for the security of agriculture and providing our food. There's some studies that have shown that the more diversity of species there are on the land, the less likely there are for diseases and crop pests to spread, and so the wild plants can be really important for protecting the agricultural crops as well. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to make some nettle soup. So I don't get too badly stung. You can wear gloves for this bit. Now I'm going to just chop some onion and celery and carrot to start with, and a bit of courgette, because all soups need a good vegetable base. And I like to use ghee, but you can use any fat or oil to cook those in. Don't really have to faff about much with this soup, just kind of chuck it all in, which is my favourite kind of soup because it takes a lot less time. Just let that saute for a little while. the vegetables, they're starting to soften up. I'm just going to pop in the nettles as they are, they don't need chopping, and just let them wilt on top of the vegetables for a minute. And it's starting to shrink a bit. Oh my goodness, can you smell that? Amazing. The next knot in. And sprinkle on some salt. Put the lid back on for them to wilt. That's wilted down quite a lot now. It's quite amazing how such a big basket of nettles can turn into almost nothing. So I'm going to pour on some hot water to make into a stock. And add in the ransoms and cleavers. And usually add fresh mushrooms, but I haven't got any today. But my partner collects wild mushrooms and dries them. So these are seps. Put them in with the stock to help rehydrate. I'm going to chuck in a bit of bay leaf and some parsley, a little bit of thyme and some mixed herbs. I've got a vegetable stock, although nettle soup does lend itself really well to chicken stock as well, but I'll make this one vegetarian today. Now I'm just going to pop the lid on and leave it to simmer for about half an hour or so. It's looking good. Those mushrooms have swelled up nicely.